All right. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 8 of Founders Unfiltered, a series presented to you by creators of products and fairangels.vc. And today we have with us co-founder and CEO at Lightbulb.ai, a very interesting startup and a very interesting personality as well. I had a chance to chat with her right before this call, and I'm sure everyone is in here for a ride. So welcome to the session, Ritu, and really glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be in a forum of creators of products. It's a very rare opportunity, and thank you so much for making it happen for me.
Yeah, actually, we have to thank Govind and Sumit for this series in particular, because this was a brainchild of theirs, and we're really glad to have partnered with Fair Angels for this one, and hoping to have more such sessions going forward as well. So coming to Lightbulb straight away, like a very interesting name and a very interesting concept as well, right? How did you come up with the name for this startup? Like,
it's actually a really odd story. When we were coming up with the name, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I was telling her what happens when the product gets used. We were kind of explaining the concept to her, and first she was extremely upset about the product, but she said, if my friends find out that you're watching while I'm studying or not studying, I'm going to be very unpopular. I said, well, them's the breaks. And she said, it's like a light bulb going off in the mind of the teacher. And, that kind of stuck for us. And we said, that's an interesting name, because we do want to bring a series of light bulb moments or insights. So we said, why not? Let's just stay with the name. We eventually thought we'd move to something better, but now it's just kind of become part of the story.
Amazing. So, yeah, absolutely. Like the concept, when I first went through it, it sounded too good to be true, if I were to be honest. And I do resonate with your child, and this is going to probably,
Tip off a lot of people.
yeah, absolutely. So moving on, how did you come up with the idea? What exactly was your thought process when you started Lightbulb? And you do have a partner in crime over here, right? Vishal, if I'm not wrong. So how did you two meet and come up with this idea, or, kick-started this?
So, well, there's actually the three of us. There's Yogesh, who leads engineering. There's Vishal, who leads product, and myself, I lead sales and marketing. We've all been together since our Obino days. So we had a startup prior to this, which was called Obino, Health and Weight Loss Coaching Application. And we sold that business in 2017 to strategic US investors. And we were with them post serving our lock-in. And it was during that time that COVID happened. So we sold the business in 2017, 2019, COVID happened. And we were all working from home, as was the rest of the world. And we all have teenage children, like my daughter's 12, Yogesh's kids are anywhere between, 7 to 14. And we all have kids of that age. And this was the first time that we really came face to face with the reality of online education, which, as you know, the reality, it does not definitely live up to the hype. And we realized that most digital interactions, specifically education, are deeply compromised in terms of the outcomes. So you're on screen with an educator, there's a large cohort of learners, but everybody is switched off, sleeping, browsing and chatting on other tabs. So the actual learning process gets deeply compromised. And that's when we felt there is an opportunity to improve the process of learning. And then when we kind of stepped back and looked at the problem in a more macro view, we realized it's not just learning. Whether you're engaging in a video conference, in a sales context, in a learning context, in a consultation context, in a customer service context, the fact that somebody has only that much access to you on a screen allows for a lot of behavior which distracts you. And that has implications on the transaction itself. So that was really where the thinking for Lightbulb started. We said, can we make every online interaction as productive as an offline interaction? And that's the core thinking for Lightbulb.
Sounds amazing. So looks like you had yourself a light bulb moment at that time, and that is that is when the session, when the idea actually came into picture. So for everyone who just joined, we have Ritu with us from Lightbulb, and we are going to discuss a journey the progress that she has made with Lightbulb, and post that, we will open the floor to Q&A. And if you have any questions, meanwhile, feel free to put them on the chat and we'll take them up right after we are done with the discussion, right? So those who are not aware of Lightbulb, I'll probably explain it with a simple example. I currently work with an edtech, and in edtech, as you know, you tend to have trial classes, right? And what if someone gives you an option that, hey, you are taking a trial class, and after the trial class, you get to know whether the student will actually join or not. That is what Lightbulb does. That is the kind of insight or depth of detail that Lightbulb gives you. Once the student has joined, if you're taking sessions or classes, whether the student is liking the session or not, whether the student will leave or not, that is the kind of insights that Lightbulb will be giving you. And it's not just on the student side, even on the teacher's side, right? It will give you the insights around whether the teacher is doing well or not. So this is just about EdTech. I'm pretty sure Ritu has other plans as well, and probably will be moving into other domains as well. Why not hear it from her mouth itself?
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful description. I don't think I could have explained it better myself. And for an edtech, someone in edtech to come back and say that to me, it just sounds so much more impressive. So thank you for that. You're absolutely right. What we do at Lightbulb essentially is look at your camera feed. So any call which is held on a video conferencing platform, it could be this call, which could be a webinar kind of model. It could be a one-on-one call. It could be a one to multi-party kind of model. In any of these scenarios, what Lightbulb does is it pulls the video feed, and in real time, it does three things. The first is it detects the face in the frame. So let's take your example. It would recognize that there is a face in the frame. Then it would recognize the emotions, and that's a machine learning process. We essentially take screenshots at 1 frame per second. We can do it faster as well. And then we compare the emotion on your face with the database at the backend, and we say 90% match for happy because he's smiling, right? And once we get that information, we build a third layer on top, which says, given the face, head tilt position, the expression, eye contact with the screen, distance from the screen, we put all of these factors and derive engagement. Now, engagement is the third and proprietary layer. That's where our IP really kicks in, our ability to derive engagement in multiple formats. And that's where we have filed a certain number of patents also to prove that the process really works. And what we do is we detect the face, we recognize the emotion, and we derive engagement. Now, once you have this information, depending on the context, whether it's an acquisition-based demo class, whether it's a session where you're looking to measure retention, whether it's a sales meeting, whether you're looking to gauge whether the prospect is interested, whether it's a founder pitch where you want to see whether the investor is vibing with what you're saying, the context can lend more depth to the understanding. But at the base of the technology, you detect face, recognize emotion, and derive engagement. That's what we do.
Wow. So I hope this call is not getting a light bulb in a way.
No, we are extremely upfront about explicit consent and opt-in. So we are in compliance with the GDPR laws as well as the Data Privacy Act. And before every call, every participant is asked for an explicit approval to take their camera feed. So if you say, no, don't take my camera feed, we move on and don't record your calls. We're also working on some technology to kind of anonymize the facial attribute data right when pulling it from the video itself. So we're trying to reach a stage where we don't have your screenshot sitting on our server for purging, but that's still a little farther away. We want to build SDK-based models which will just extract facial attributes and send them to the server. It also helps with compression and data transmission speed, so it makes the process lighter as well. So that's all in the works.
Got it. So what sort of patents have you already filed, if you don't mind me asking, and what kind of research has gone into the body language and facial expressions bit? I am a huge fan of Paul Ekman, to put it out there. And if for others who might not be aware, he's the pioneer, or someone who identified and established micro expressions, which are basically how the way you react and the way you behave, or your face tells exactly what you're thinking. So just want to hear it from you as well, Ritu. What sort of research has went into this?
So I think there's been a lot of interesting work that's been done by Paul Ekman, and that was what led to the major work done by Effectiva, which was one of the earliest pioneers in the emotion AI space. They are, in fact, the only people, Rana, Kalyubi, and Effectiva were the companies that have been working in the space for the last 20, 22 years. I don't think there is so much innovative work that's happening on actual emotion identification anymore. The patents that we have filed specifically do not build on emotion. And the reason for that is macro emotions and micro emotions, their recognition and expression has now become a commodity. AWS, Deepface, Microsoft, everybody has these APIs. It's a different thing. They are expensive to access, use, and apply, but the data exists. The real play here is once you recognize an emotion, what do you do with it? How do you contextualize it to a particular situation? And our patents play in that space. So we've looked at patents for engagement analysis in live teaching scenarios, sales augmentation scenarios, market research scenarios, because these are the three largest use cases for us. So specifically, we take facial attribute data in terms of expressions, combine it with head placement, body language, and behavioral cues to interpret engagement. I know that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but that's what we do.
Got it. And until now, like, what is the progress that Lightbulb has made? What are the different domains that you have worked with or worked in? And are there any interesting examples or use cases that you have identified along the way?
So we are very clear that for the first couple of years, we deeply want to focus on the EdTech use case. And there are multiple reasons for why we zeroed in on EdTech versus other industries. And in EdTech specifically, we want to work on engagement analytics. What's interesting and how it kind of adds value, let me share a couple of examples of some of the pilots that we're working with right now. So one of the pilots that we're working with is a kids emotional counseling platform. Now they deal with children between the ages of 12 to 18 and look not just at neurotypical children who have emotional issues, but they also look at children suffering from ADHD or autism across the spectrum. Now, kids in the autistic spectrum specifically have issues with concentration and attention. So the founder, and we're working directly with the founder on this one, was extremely interested to see whether we could gauge attention levels and benchmark them from session to session to see whether for autistic or ADHD challenged children, there were significant improvements in the ability to concentrate and pay attention from session to session, proving therefore that the counseling and the therapy is working. That was one use case. The second use case that kind of came up as a point of interest was right in the beginning when we were kind of demoing the technology to them. They said, how do we know this even works? So we said, give us a couple of videos, let's analyze them for you and throw back some insights and you see whether it works. So amongst one of the videos they gave us was a video of this child who was displaying certain positive indications of behavior. And somewhere halfway through the entire session, we noticed that the positive behavior patterns dropped dramatically and stayed down. So we threw that back as an insight. We said, this is something that the system threw up. Maybe you should look at it because it's atypical behavior. When they got into it, they realized that at that particular point where the system registered a drop, the counselor had started using keywords that were detrimental to the outcome intended for the session. They sent the child into a negative spiral. Now, this was just one of the many, many cases that kind of comes through the pipeline for us. But what proves, where this feeds back into the technology is in multiple contexts, certain behavior cues give you individualized insights into the psyche of the person that you're dealing with. Now, when you take this technology and apply it on a mass scale, like if you're having a webinar, how many people are responding positively and are likely to adopt your product versus how many are responding negatively and do not identify with your messaging? The applications are absolutely mind-blowing. And we believe this is just the beginning because the world is moving to video now. Everything that could be done offline is going to get done online. So this kind of technology, which interprets emotion in the metaverse, so to speak, can potentially be quite interesting.
Got it. Also, Kishore has a follow-up question, like, is this just around video that Lightbulb analyzes and gives insights about, or do they also analyze audio?
So currently we focus on video. So emotion AI as a segment itself has primarily been anchored by two kinds of technologies. One is speech-based, which is conversational AI. Some really large companies obviously have been built in this space, not the smallest of which is Gong, which is into revenue-based intelligence. And then you have Observe AI, you have Unifor. There are multiple use cases, but conversational AI is a much more mature field. It's been around for the last 15, 20 years. It's very standardized. On the other hand, CVAS, which is computer vision as a service, which is what Lightbulb is built on, is a relatively more nascent and more complex technology. It started 20, 25 years ago, but has recently kind of come into its own. And the primary applications of all of these are in the market research space. So in education, the reason we went with CVAS over conversational AI is because in an educational context, much like this meeting, the person talking most is the moderator, right? Not so much the participants. If I was to depend on speech as an emotion input, I would get nothing. But in a CVAS model, in an edtech context, I am able to read the emotions of all of the participants. Having said that, conversational AI is going to be an integral second leg to our solution. We are looking to build out a full stack, but initially CVAS does the trick for us.
Got it. Thanks a lot for answering that. Kishore, hope that answers your question. And over to Govind for the next question.
Thanks, Ankur. So Ritu, I mean, there are some things which are obvious, and then there are deeper use cases which you shared about that particular child and the whole spectrum analysis. What is the deepest use case you've come across which you hadn't even thought of, and would be something which would be aspirational, that, beyond is the lecture boring, or is it engaging, or will this convert? I mean, which are the deeper use cases which are aspirational?
So for us, actually, we didn't come up with this particular use case. It was a bit of an eye-opener for us. An industry professional came up with it. So we were connecting with founders and CXO level members of various edtech companies. And I had a conversation with the CEO of Times Professional Learning, which was Mr. Anish Srikrishna. And he actually asked me a question which kind of took me aback. He said, Ritu, if we deploy this technology, can you actually predict assessment outcomes for me? Can you look at a student right now and tell me 6 months from now, how much will he learn and whether he will be able to clear and achieve the kind of learning outcomes that we want for him? So we said, okay, that's an interesting problem, because that's prediction technology is never easy to build. So we went back to the drawing board, thought about it a lot, looked at the data, and we realized that if we have access to sufficient volumes of data sets using engagement patterns and learning behavior now, we can actually predict learning outcomes in the future, which means that today you can take a snapshot of an edtech classroom and predict who the topper is going to be 6 months from now. Because it is not just about intellectual aptitude, it is about a certain set of behaviors and engagement levels that remain consistent or inconsistent over a period of time, leading to a certain learning outcome. So multiple variables go into deriving a learning outcome. And when you have a fix on most of them, then you can actually predict 6 months from now what's going to happen to the student. And we think that's a game changer. So that came from the industry.
But you will consistently need to monitor him, right? Things may change, he may lose interest, he may be...
Absolutely. So predictive technology will always be based on a certain amount of input data. But what's interesting is if you have sufficient volume on journeys, then even a small piece of someone's journey fitted into that model will give you a probability of the assessment outcome with at least a 70-80% chance of success. So even if you look at just 2 weeks of his behavior, you'll be able to say 6 months from now, this guy's going to score an 85%.
So as I understand the product more and more, you guys are building this as DIY, but you'll be doing a lot of more customized pitching or trying to get feedback, because there are so many angles which you wouldn't have found out yourself, right?
Absolutely. As we enter deeper into edtech, I think what's coming out for us is the thinking of the educators as to the learning outcomes, because there's a certain set of tangible variables that we can see, that we can factor for. There's a lot of intangible domain expertise that we'll only get once we work with these people and understand what questions they want answered. Once we figured out the question, we can figure out the answer, but getting to the right question is important.
Understood. My last question before I hand it to Sumit. So, Ritu, I mean, while you were exiting Obino and this came up, was this the first idea? I mean, did you all think of dropping it? Because many people here want to be founders, but ideas keep changing, that conviction doesn't come. So the question is from that angle. I mean, when were you convinced, or were you convinced from the beginning?
No, we weren't. So I am actually the person who keeps coming up with ideas in our team. So I presented some 4 ideas and my co-founders shot it down. So I would come with, I've got a new idea. And they'd be like, no, this doesn't work. This has this problem. We won't be able to scale it. And I was like, yeah, people are killing me now. I'm going to keep coming up with ideas. But I think what helped was having Obino's experience under our belt. I had a very clear checklist for what qualities my next idea must possess, which was more of a process of elimination from what we said, yaar, Obino mein to ye bhasad mach gayi, ab ye agle wale mein ye wali bhasad nahi machayenge. So for instance, from Obino, we knew that we were very clear we didn't want to do a service level business, because service standardization and scaling of manpower in a lack of skill set oriented market like India is just a nightmare. So we said service oriented business nahi karna. Second, health hum kar hi nahi sakte the, because obviously we were barred from that industry due to our non-competes. And the third that we were very clear what we wanted to do was, we said we want to do something that will significantly impact the behaviors of a large number of people for the good. So we wanted to build for good, which was something we did at Obino, but it was more unconscious. This time we wanted to have a stated, articulated impact for good. And really, there is no better place to do good than in the space of education. So I think those were the tick marks that this idea really came down.
So basically B2B SaaS, digital only product, large market.
Which is an investor tick mark as well. Surprise!
Got it. Over to you, Sumit. Thanks, Ritu.
Thanks, Ritu. Thanks, Govind. I think you nailed it last. You stole it from me. But Ritu, I think it's an amazing product. I think, and I see it's a huge use case for not only students, but also I think in the corporate world, because I think as we are moving more digital, I see a lot of times people are doing multiple things on the same time, and we don't know whether they're listening to us or not. So I want to understand from you, what is the current traction you are getting? How has been the response of the market? Do you see, like I see that you've written, you were to first focus on North America, and that's typical, made in India for the world, but not for Indian companies. That's what SaaS companies are doing in India. Like, I don't know any SaaS company saying I'll serve India, because the price point is very low. People want to fight for a single dollar, and I face everything in my business, trust me, because I also do similar stuff in photography. And the clients would argue for 5 rupees, not even like 10 rupees, 5 rupees also I have to discuss and negotiate. Okay, so how has been your traction? How has been your perceived response from the market till now? If you could share some insights on that.
So I think we spoke to, so far I have personally spoken to about 42 CXOs and founders in the edtech space, and we have seen over a 60% conversion for an agreement to a pilot. So we are really seeing a lot of interest in this technology, which is great. However, as you very rightly observed, there is a lack of propensity to pay in the Indian market, which is a concern. But that's not so much my concern on Lightbulb, because we're an analytics product. Even one decent client can generate a lot of revenue for us because of the volume of data that flows through it. I think where my concern is, in the edtech market in India currently, we are a very, very nascent market. And specifically, the online learning space is even more nascent. So what happens is that Indian companies are so caught up in the acquisition race today that the quality of learning outcomes and the retention of students or learners is a distant second objective, if at all on the table. Now, this is unlike the reality of the Western markets, where education is tremendously expensive. So anybody opting in for a course is actually paying a ridiculous amount of money, and therefore the value that they demand from the business in terms of the quality of learning outcome is very high. The market is mature, it's larger, it's more expensive, and therefore they are in the retention and value addition space already as a segment in online learning. So I think it's more of a life stage of the industry itself in these two different markets that drives us towards the North America market. The North America market appreciates innovation and is willing to pay for outcomes. In India right now, they're like, pehle student ko le aao, uske baad mein dekhenge. So that doesn't really help in the adoption of such technology.
Got it. Thank you very much, Ritu. Thank you very much. And one more thing, why are you only like, are you only going to look at North America right now? Why are you not? And I think EdTech, when you talk about EdTech, there was a news in the morning today, I don't know if you read it, that Byju's going for a SPAC for a $40 billion valuation. Okay. So I want to understand from you, are you targeting to talk to Byju's as well in India, or you are still not looking at Indian market at all? Sorry, I'm putting on a spot, but I just want to understand the question, the thoughts on that.
So we are definitely right now, all of our pilots, and we have about 6 to 10 pilots in the pipeline, which are slowly going live. They're all with Indian companies. So it's not like we're not looking at or trying to understand the Indian market. Definitely not. I think closest to home is the best place to get the validation for the product, iron out the bugs, just make sure the product's firing on all cylinders. We do want to commercially deploy the product in North America because of the reasons that I had explained. And the reason that we are specifically currently not targeting organizations the size of Byju's or Vedantu or Topper is that as a business, we are too young right now to cater to them. So it's important not to bite off more than you can chew. Once the product is stable, scalable, firing on all cylinders, giving the right accuracy levels, and we are in a position to scale with not just technology, but with also the manpower needed to support the scaling, then we are happy to open up conversations. And I believe the Indian startup ecosystem is very receptive in that sense, that you would be able to reach out to the right people when you need to. But I think a sufficient amount of firepower needs to be ready before you start scaling. It can break your product and your system if you try to scale too early, is my sense. That could be
Got it. Got it. My last question before I give it back to everybody else. I know people will hate me the way I'm asking so many questions. No, because it's a very, very exciting space, and because I'm also in AI space, we are doing similar stuff in for photographers and the big clients globally. So I understand the challenge very closely, how the sales happen, how the entire freemium model works. Initially give them for free, show them the taste of the product, and again, in Miro, we are creating case studies with global companies, and then taking the case studies to other companies and say, this is what we did with a big client globally, and now it helps them to figure out a way to work with us. My last question: do you also plan to launch a standalone app or a standalone product for end users, focus only on B2B for now? This question is asked by me every single time, so I'm asking the same question to you this time.
No, actually, this is a question that a lot of investors have come back and asked us, because we're in our fundraising journey right now. And the strange part is, when we first thought of this product, we didn't think of it as an education B2B SaaS. We conceived of it as a way for content creators to get feedback on their products. That was the very first thought process around Lightbulb, and the inspiration actually came from Canva. So I'm a huge Canva fan and a user, and I loved how they democratized the process of design. And for us, Lightbulb was a way to democratize feedback for all content creators globally, and that was how we started thinking about it. So that thought process is very close to our hearts. It's definitely something we're going to take up in the future, but the challenges with implementing that model early on is that it's a model that's difficult to monetize, because content creation today is done on the fly, and content testing is not an accepted revenue, a cost head. So people willing to pay to test their content, that number hasn't reached significant scale yet. We believe it will in the future, because it is a creator's economy. Everybody is moving to monetizing their creations on social media, whether you look at NFT trends, whether you look at social media. That's where we are going as a culture. So this is going to catch up. But in the early years, to be able to significantly monetize and survive long enough to get to that kind of scale, I think it's important to focus on B2B for now, and then slowly build out an offering for the long tail.
Thanks a lot, Sumit. Thanks, Govind. Ritu, a follow-up question on the product itself, coming back to Lightbulb. will the solution or the product be able to give insights based on one video, or there has to be a continuous process of like a couple of videos for Lightbulb to be able to predict what the user is going to do or how the user is feeling?
So for the feeling and response and real-time emotion and engagement, we can do it with even 30 seconds of video. So because that's a real-time feedback. For actual predictions, you would need larger data sets. Now, predictions is not something we're doing currently. It's at least 6 to 8 months away, because you would need at least that volume of data to be able to build your predictive models. What we provide currently is 2 key feature sets, which is in any session, such as the one we are having now, the moderator would actually get live feedback. So if I had Lightbulb switched on, if you had Lightbulb switched on, you would actually get web notifications on your screen right now saying, Ritu is engaged, Govind's not engaged, Sumit is engaged, Suraj is not engaged. You know, X number of people are showing positive reactions, Y number of people are showing negative reactions. Overall, you're doing a great job because your class is engaged. So you'd get live feedback that would allow you to modify your presentation as and when you're doing it. And the second thing is, after the session, you would get a detailed report and breakdown of how people were feeling throughout the session. You'd get it at participant level, you'd get it at session level. If this was a series, you'd get it at course level. So we've got multiple cuts of data available for analysis.
Got it. Got it. Also, are there any competitors within India or outside that are any players that are in the same space or working on a similar product?
So there are a lot of players globally for emotion AI. In India, we only have one competitor in the same technology space, which is Entropic Tech. Ranjan is quite an amazing entrepreneur. And they, however, deal and focus primarily on the market research use case. So for education per se, no, we don't really have any, either an Indian competitor or an external global competitor. We're hoping it stays that way for some time.
Got it. The reason I ask this question is because I'm sure many in the audience would have also seen a lot of Hollywood movies wherein, you know, the US military or the they're monitoring faces of different people walking into airport or different public places, and they're able to figure out, okay, this person is not good and this person means harm. So is that something that you feel really exists out there? Is that something that Lightbulb will also be able to venture into going forward?
So this segment absolutely exists. Cybersecurity and facial recognition for criminal identification is one of the largest surveillance technology use cases globally. Could we have built that? Absolutely. Do we want to build it? Absolutely not. I think facial recognition, identification of criminal elements has a potential for tremendous misuse. And we've all seen cases of that in the news, especially in the way China has used this technology to define and restrict movement of certain ethnicities. Now, as an organization, we were very clear from day one that if we were building for good, there was no way we wanted this technology to be used for harm. So even in our current technology, we don't recognize faces. We recognize emotions and we derive engagement levels, but the data itself is anonymized. So I don't know that you are who you are, and I don't track you from session to session as who you are. I recognize you as a customer ID passed to me by an edtech company against which a series of emotions and engagement levels are mapped. I don't know who you are, and I can't reconstitute who you are from my data. And that is critical because as you spread globally, organizations that invade personally identifiable information and retain it are going to increasingly get targeted by governments. And we don't want to come in for that kind of scrutiny. It's just bad for business.
Got it. Got it. Also, most of the edtech players in India or even abroad, I would say, they would not rely on live sessions per se, right? They might have pre-recorded content that users can watch and learn on their own. So how does Lightbulb work in that particular scenario?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question, especially as we head into the North America market. The proportion of companies dealing in pre-recorded content is exponentially higher. And that's a trend or an insight that we also realized is if you look at developing economies, labor is cheap, specifically teaching labor is cheap. So live sessions are a big business, right? Because your teachers are cheap. The moment you go to developed economies and labor becomes expensive, live content drops because paying the teacher is just not effective or doesn't make great business sense. So the content becomes pre-recorded. But conversely, what's also happening is if you look at the large MOOCs or massive online courses that are happening, their dropout ratios range anywhere between 60 to 80% over a 3-week period, which means that, and we experience this at Obino as well, the world wants automated touch points to sell. Humans don't like automated touch points. Now, this is always going to be a clash between what the consumer really wants and derives value from and what the business wants to provide to extract maximum value from. And as a trend, if you see some of the largest companies that have been built in this space don't necessarily depend only on pre-recorded content. Most of them are starting to introduce hybrid models. So having said all this, yes, the US is definitely a more pre-recorded market. The services that we provide give you the same kind of user monitoring in response to pre-recorded content also. But we feel globally the trend towards live learning is starting to pick up more. And that's why Byju's, Vedantu, Topper, a lot of these organizations which provide live tuition models are actually gaining a lot of traction because that's what people really see value in.
Got it. Got it. So we have another question from the audience. I'm not sure if Sagar is here. No. So I'll ask his question. How would this particular model or Lightbulb work in case of a hybrid model, like you mentioned, in case there's an offline thing as well as an online thing? So
it's actually really simple. Let's assume you're an edtech company that provides courses on leadership, as an example, and you have a course curriculum, which is a mix of certain pre-recorded modules and some live sessions for interactivity. How we work is we plug in via an SDK into your LMS, which is your learning management system. Every time a student logs into the LMS and clicks on a session, our SDK wakes up, asks for explicit camera permission, and starts pulling your video feed. Now, whether you're engaging with a pre-recorded session or whether you're actually interacting with a teacher on a Zoom call, our SDK is just simply pulling your camera feeds and monitoring your reactions to each session. So the technology itself doesn't change, the context changes, and therefore the insights that you get per context change. But from a backend perspective and a technology integration perspective, for us, you are a learner interacting with a system. Whether it's live or pre-recorded is up to the business.
Makes sense. So going forward, like, what are your plans with Lightbulb? How long do you want to, just be in the edtech space and then probably think about other domains? And if you have any runway in mind that you can share, probably, I think our audience would definitely love to hear more about that.
So I think definitely at least a couple of years to the edtech use case, unless we get very clear indications that there is no product market fit happening. So I think 6 to 9 months is a decent enough time to get a sense of whether product market fit in this segment is going to happen or not. If in that period of time we feel it's not happening, we are already starting to run smaller experiments in customer experience, sales enablement, counseling, and trying to build up smaller instances of product market fit so that we know that, say, at the end of 6 to 9 months, if education is not working, then we already have the next industry to kind of start focusing on. Our sense is it's probably going to be between sales enablement and counseling, mental health counseling, or any kind of counseling. But we still need to run many, many more experiments to get a handle on that. So there is a certain bandwidth. So in fact, we're working with a leading bank for an experiment on customer service. We're working with 2 edtech organizations on the sales enablement piece because their courses are worth 2.5 to 3 lakh each. So they are giving their salespeople Lightbulb to see how interested the prospect is to pay 2.5 lakhs. Now, that sales enablement model is just another, it's an experiment for whether I can sell B2B SaaS to remote organizations using Lightbulb. So smaller experiments to understand which way the market may tilt, build backup alternatives or verticals in case education goes south. So that's the plan.
Got it. So I think I'm done with questions from my end. Govind, if you have any questions, please feel free. Otherwise, we can open the floor for questions from the audience.
No, I don't have any other questions. I think I just wanted to understand how many people from Shruti's Obino's team have come here. How is this, because it's our second time founder, how has the journey been transiting?
Ritu's team.
Sorry, Ritu. I keep getting it's happened earlier also. I'm sorry, Ritu. Yeah.
No problem. Don't worry about it. Well, unfortunately, we are bound by investor non-competes and non-solicitation. So because the organization got acquired, even though I would love to have, some of my key former employees with me, legally, that's not possible. So unfortunately, that's not something we could make happen.
So it's just the core team. It's you, the three founders, basically.
It's just us.
So all three have stuck through. I mean, that's a wonderful journey, because there's always one that fades off, wants to grow slower than the others. So it's all three who stuck through both. Yeah.
So far, yes, fingers crossed that it doesn't change. No, but I think, I'm married to one, and I've been.
Oh, okay. That makes it.
So he can't run away that easily. So the other one who's been with me, so Yogesh, has been with us since 2006. So after 15 years, I don't think he's running away either. So got my grip firmly on both of them.
I think these are the biggest advantages, more than disadvantages, which people don't realize. I mean, teams working together for almost 1.5 decades is something significant.
I think there are very few surprises now, right? We know exactly what to expect. And how to plan around it. And there's a certain amount of affection and trust and respect, which carries you through the tough parts, which I see a lot of the younger founding teams, they're like, usne wo nahi kiya, isne ye nahi kiya, isne zyada equity mang li, and then the whole relationship falls apart. Here you've been together for so long, you're like, yeah, jo bhi hoga, dekha jayega, abhi to aage badho. We'll figure it out later. So.
Ankur, I think you can head to the audience questions, if any more.
All right, so people, if you have any questions, please raise your hands, or I'll just give everyone the permission to unmute themselves. Just feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. Meanwhile, Ritu, how big is your team currently at Lightbulb?
Very small. Yeah, we're just like 7 people, 3 founders. And we've got 3 technical staff members and 1 junior sales guy who's constantly wondering what is going on. So yeah, he does everything but sales, poor soul.
What are your expansion plans for the team? Like, what are the roles that you're looking to hire for, or you're actively hiring for?
We need to obviously build out all the verticals very, very clearly. Right now, I'm running all of sales. Vishal is doing all of product. Technical, Yogesh has a little help because he literally can't build everything by himself. But we're very clear we don't want to build a big team. Even at our full expansion, we should not hopefully be more than 30, 35 people. Because I think this is a technology that just requires depth of understanding and learning being fed back into the product rather than more hands on deck. So, and we also don't want to make the mistake that we see a lot of our customers making, which is building when you can plug in, right? Because that's a lot of, I see that behavior in Indian startups and companies a lot. वो तो हम बना लेंगे, नहीं बना पाओगे, ना बना पाओगे, ना time मिलेगा और वो feature भी चला जाएगा. So we want to just plug in the best tools, only build when it's core IP. We want to avoid, making these classic mistakes the second time around.
Got it. So another question from my end. This is more of a personal question. Obviously, you did not have to go looking for co-founders for Lightbulb, but for Obino, like, how did that pan out? Were you and Vishal, already a couple before Obino, or that happened after that? And how did you find a co-founder back then?
So we've been married since 2002, and we were together even before that. So Vishal was not a challenge. But Yogesh, actually, he was my counterpart in Airtel. He used to be a part of the IT and innovation team, whereas I was on the product front. So I always knew him. But when I quit, and at the time when I met Sumit, I didn't have Yogesh as a co-founder. So I was trying to build it on my own, August 2012. And I don't know, Sumit, whether you remember Manav Verma, who used to be part of the broadband team.
I know Manav.
You remember it. And Manav actually introduced me to Yogesh. They were friends, and he said, you're a marketing co-founder looking for a tech co-founder. He's a tech co-founder looking for somebody to work with. Why don't you all chat? And I remember he was working at Aircel at that point, and I walked across the road literally because Aircel used to be in Cyber Greens, and I met him at Barista. And I remember talking for about, I tend to talk, as you must have guessed by now. So I spoke for about 45 minutes, and Yogesh is my polar opposite in every way. He would just, so after 1 hour, when I finally stopped talking, I said, so what do you think? He said, karte hain. And that was it. And the meeting finished, and I came back home, and Vishal was like, how did it go? I said, I'm not sure, but I think we have a co-founder. So yeah, evidently it worked, and he's just a wonderful person. So the whole thing lasted. Touch wood.
Amazing. Like, I wish it was that simple for everyone.
I know these days when somebody says, how do I find a tech co-founder? I'm like, Barista. Try Barista. It worked for me.
Got it. So Kishore has a question. I think I already answered this before, but would definitely love to hear this from you. Based on the analysis, is Lightbulb just helpful to students to learn how they can improve better, or for teachers as well, how they can teach better to the complete cohort?
So actually, that's a really interesting question, because a lot of our positioning right now as we sell to remote learning companies is for teachers and product and content teams to understand learner engagement. But in fact, this was an idea that came back to us in the beginning as well, and it's coming back now, is using Lightbulb as a source of self-learning. So today, let's just say as a founder, I do 100 pitches to investors, right? But do I even know how I'm coming across on my pitches? I don't. I'm just winging it and hopefully hoping that it elicits the right emotional reaction. Because any sales pitch, right, whether it's a founder pitching to an investor, whether it's a job candidate pitching to a prospective employer, whether it's an actual salesperson pitching to a customer, whether it's a customer service agent pitching to an irritated customer, all of these, at the heart of it, are sales interactions. And at the heart of it, you want to elicit or generate a certain positive emotion. So if you look at all these interactions, there is one person who is saying something, hoping to generate a certain emotion in the opposing party. Are you able to generate that emotion, or are you able to portray yourself in a way that that emotion will get generated, is the single biggest question. We think this product in the long tail has a tremendous capacity to be used for self-learning. Am I coming across as confident, or am I coming across as nervous? Am I coming across as positive, or am I coming across as negative? Do I look continuously surprised when I'm talking to you, or do I look relaxed and happy and easygoing? Now, all of these things are things that we would love to know about ourselves, and we would pay to know these things. So I think there is a lot of fun you can have with this product.
Absolutely. And the one use case that just came to my mind is, what if this, the recruiters, they catch hold of this particular technology and they are able to implement this during the interview? That will be like dating for most of us, I would say.
Lie detectors.
Yeah.
No, in fact, we are working on a pre-pilot content testing with BarRaiser, which is a candidate analysis platform to help them test for soft skills required in their candidates. So that's another use case that's coming up. So wherever you turn, you're falling over a use case for this product. You just have, I think where I'm really concerned is that we pick the right use case that can scale and monetize. You tend to get so excited when you see so many applications that sometimes I worry we might head in the wrong direction. So, good problem to have.
Good problem to have. Very good problem.
But I agree with you. Avoid niche, try mass, and try as much deep value add beyond the obvious.
All right. Audience, any questions, anything that you would like to ask Ritu? Cool. So meanwhile, Ritu, I'll just tell you couple of programs that we're running at Creators of Products, and then probably we'll wrap this session up. We have a founders channel within the community wherein, there are a lot of first-time founders, second-time founders, and people who are just starting out. They can collaborate, discuss, get feedback on what they're building, etc. And that is a really amazing channel to be a part of. So we would definitely want you to be a part of that channel as well, and probably help out other founders as well whenever you get time. And of course, if you have not joined Creators of Products yet, that is the first pitch that I'll be making to you. Please do.
100%. Please count me in. Happy to help in any way I can. I think the founder community and the startup ecosystem community has been a huge source of support. I would love to help in any way I can. So please count me in for whatever is needed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Also, we are piloting a hiring initiative for our founders, especially the ones who are part of the Founders Club. And the team is helping them close on critical positions that they need to close right away. And hopefully by end of this month or early next month, we should be able to launch it full scale. And if Lightbulb has any requirements that they would want to close down on real quick, I think the team can really help on that front as well.
Awesome, because we desperately need help with hiring. The coming year hopefully is going to be great, and we will need wonderful people to run the journey with us. So I will definitely be reaching out for help in this regard.
Awesome. All right. If there are no further questions, it was really a pleasure to host you on this session, Ritu, and hoping that Lightbulb scales real quick and the team grows as big as you can.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
Good
crossed.
Good luck, Ritu. Take care. We should catch up later on separately.
100%. We will remain in touch now. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Govind has been a huge source of support. In the few days we've known him, he's done so much for us already. Thank you, Govind. Deeply appreciate it. And lovely catching up with you again, Sumit. And Creators of Product, I'm sure, will be a huge support for us. So I will be in touch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good Sunday. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ankur. It was